Dean Carroll is not in the room because he's not very well today, but he is joining us via Teams. So thank you, Dean. Do we have any disposable pecuniary interests? No, thank you. On to the minutes. To confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of June, which I believe you've all received, I'm happy to propose those.
Yeah, I'll have a second, Leader.
Any comments on those? No, thank you. Everybody in favour? Thank you very much. As far as I'm aware, we have no public questions, so we will move on to item number 5, which is member question time. The first question, I think, is from Andy Boddington. Is Andy with us this morning? No, he's not. Tim, could you read out Andy's question for me, please? Is that possible?
Sorry, Leader, I don't actually have it in front of me.
Okay, not to worry. I will try and find that. 1 moment. I will read it out. Oh, sorry, it's just been brought down to me. Thank you, Shelley. Okay, so I will read Andy Boddington's question. The subject matter is Coder Road. Recently, a Ludlow light engineering company was in discussions with Shropshire Council over a potential move to the former biodigester site on Calder Road. After 9 months of discussions with the company regularly chasing officers for responses, the company was told earlier this month that the site was not available until Shropshire Council decides on the future of the site in late 2023, 2.5 years from now. The company is now looking at sites in mid-Wales where there is more support from local government for business expansion. At least one other light industrial company in Ludlow is looking for local premises in which to expand within months. Council officers have told companies that employment land is in demand in South Shropshire. There is certainly demand in Ludlow. There will be more demand in the next few years. Ludlow and the adjacent parish of Ludford have approval for around 750 homes, many of which are under construction. We already have a very tight labour market. We have a shortage of semi and high skilled jobs in the engineering sector, a sector that supports hundreds of jobs locally. My questions are, what plans does Shropshire Council have for the former biodigester site and the adjacent former household recycling centre on Coder Road? My second question is, what plans does the council have to ensure that the Greenfield employment site south of Sheet Road is brought forward to accommodate company expansion and new businesses at the earliest opportunity? My third question is, proposals for regeneration of the fringes of Ludlow Centre were discussed with former council leader Peter Nutting and officers on a walking tour of Ludlow in May 2018. What has happened since that meeting to examine options for brownfield regeneration in Ludlow? And question number 4, the Ludlow Legs, I'm sure somebody will inform me what that acronym stands for, and its surrounding area is a unique opportunity for businesses to invest and grow. That is correct, but it also states the microeconomy of Ludlow is low paid and low skilled. That is incorrect. What plan does the council have to update the final draft of the Ludlow Legs? And I believe the answers to those questions are going to be provided by Councillor Ian Nellens.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Boddington, for that. The main crux of that is that the Department of the Environment for Food and Rural Affairs have proposed legislation through the Environmental Bill, which, if made into law, would require the council to collect food waste separately. At present, our food waste is collected in conjunction with garden waste, but that would no longer be required or be allowed. Anaerobic digestion within the county would provide the most cost-effective and environmentally friendly solution to such direction. As the Ludlow biodigester site already has the necessary planning and other requisite consents, the South Council seeks to retain the potential to resurrect such activity on Coder Road until legislation is confirmed next year. Thanks.
Okay, and question number 2. Have you got the information for that one, Councillor Nellens?
I think that might be me.
Oh, sorry.
I think because it crosses
It
various.
crosses over various. Sorry, Councillor Potter.
Land is available that has been allocated in the adopted standard plan at Sheet Road opposite the Ludlow Eco Park, with a further 5 hectares of employment land included in the current local plan review that is due to be submitted to examination shortly. The issue with the site is that the land is undeveloped and or serviced at present, so it isn't in a position for commercial units to be built on immediately. Officers have previously engaged with the landowner via their commercial agents back in late 2019, early 2020, to examine the potential to purchase part of the site as part of the business park programme that would have also drawn down funds by European funding. Unfortunately, following engagement with their agent, we were not able to agree on a deal for the purchase of the land, which would have met the requirements of the European funding and allowed us to scope out a suitable commercial development programme for the site. It is, however, the intention of the team to re-engage with the landowners through their agents to review their current plans and the potential to marry up interests to support in delivery of new commercial space that could be delivered by the private sector.
Thank you. And I presume number 3 is also yours, Councillor Potter.
Yeah, on number 3, whilst members of the business growth team were not directly involved in discussions or in attendance at the walking tour, I would note the response to question 2 covers activity that has been undertaken to examine the potential for development of commercial space in Ludlow.
Thank you. And finally, question number 4.
I think that's me again. The legs are going to be updated as part of the economic recovery and strategy update for 2022.
Thank you. And I'll ensure that I'll ensure that response is sent to Andy Boddington. Thank you. The second question comes from Councillor David Basma.
Leader, before Councillor Basma comes in with an unnecessary question, is it okay if I update Cabinet? And I think it will negate the need for the question.
I'm quite happy for you to do that. I'm sure Councillor Basma will be as well. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, so thank you. Cabinet had previously taken the decision not to proceed with the expression of interest for the Mini Holland scheme. The reasons being that officers are at full capacity with existing and prioritised bids which are already in progress. So there was significant concern that these could be put at risk and significant schemes in Shrewsbury and the surrounding areas could be jeopardised. However, we have now been informed that Shrewsbury Town Council and the bid are happy to fund the submission and pay for the consultants to write the actual bid itself. On that basis, we are happy to support the submission of an expression of interest, and the leader has indicated that she will happily put a signature on that expression of interest. But I do want to be clear that Shropshire Council has to prioritise the whole county and not just Shrewsbury. That is why, while supporting this expression of interest, the council will continue to prioritise active travel across the county and work up our local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, or LC WIP, as a priority scheme. We currently have £259,000 within our active travel scheme budget, but we need to complete and implement our LC WIP to unlock further and significant funds as we go forward. So I hope that negates Councillor Basma's question.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Basma, does that A, negate your question, and B, do you have a supplementary, which I'm sure you do?
Yes, thanks very much. Yes, I welcome the statement that Councillor Chalmers just made. It's very good news that we're going to go forward with expression of interest in the Mini Holland scheme, because the amount of money which could be available will be up to £20 million. And I'm sure that with that sort of money, it would benefit the whole of Shropshire and not just Shrewsbury. So, and also the experience that we could get if we were to get this money, to receive this money, would be benefit the whole of Shropshire, because the expertise we could roll out in Ludlow, Oswestry and other towns throughout. So I very much welcome this, and I look forward to the development of a bid. And hopefully, I think Shrewsbury is very, very well suited to this, given the amount of work that the Big Town Plan has generated, so that we can actually make a bid, and hopefully a successful bid, for a Mini Holland scheme in Shrewsbury. Thanks, Leader.
Thank you, David. Okay, now we did have another question come in, which unfortunately somehow got lost in the annals of our agenda setting system. But I understand Councillor Rob Wilson is on the call. I do apologise, Councillor Wilson, but would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you. It's understandable. These things happen. So my question was, what level of funding is allocated in the current 21-22 budget for active travel infrastructure, and what percentage is this of the total highways budget? And what level of funding is Shropshire Council hoping to allocate in the 2022-23 budget for active travel infrastructure? And what percentage will this be of the total highways budget?
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Now, that question's coming rather late, so I'm not certain whether we have the answers, do we? Councillor Charnley is indicating that he wants to speak, so we may well.
I can speak, whether I'll have the answer is another matter. I just appreciate I've only had 20 minutes to work on this. As we said in the previous question, we've got 259,000 in the active travel budget at present, but we need to work up an LC WIP to unlock further funding for future years. As a percentage of the highways budget, as you'll have heard at Council last week, we are looking to increase that highways budget significantly over the next few years, so it'd be impossible to give you a percentage going forward, but I can certainly get you a percentage of the highway budget for the current year.
Can I just ask in addition, do you support the aspiration of 10% of highways spending being allocated to active travel, which has been agreed by the Shropshire Climate Action Partnership, Living Streets, which is formerly Pedestrians Association, Sustrans and Cycling UK?
As I said previously, the highways budget is very, very tight, and it is fluid at the moment. We're trying to lever further money into that budget, and it's an impossible question to answer at the moment, so I'm not going to commit to that, giving an answer to that question at this time.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of the members' question time. Item number 6 is scrutiny items. I don't believe there are any this morning. Item number 7, Treasury. I'll start that again. Treasury Management Update, Q4 2021. Councillor Gwynne Butler.
Thank you, Leader. This is the routine quarterly report from the Treasury. As you can see, we are investing 148 million with historic borrowing of 304 million. Just a few things to actually note. We are punching above our weight nationally on what return we're getting, saying that the return is still exceedingly modest as base continues to be 0.1%. To me, this highlights the relevance of why we invest in other areas of the capital programme, which give us better revenue returns, which we discussed last week at full council. Moving forward, one of the other interesting things to note is the predictions on the base rate from the Treasury. Looks like that those low interest rates are going to be with us for at least 3 years, and I think in the short to medium term, we as a council, as we review our capital programme, we definitely need to see where we can actually invest our money to create better revenue streams, and that will be something I'll be looking forward to doing with Cabinet over the late summer, early autumn, Leader. I move the report. It is just to be noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Do you have a second for that?
Happy to, a second, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Rob Gittins. David Vasma.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I just want to make a question on this report on section 5 and also section 6. I wonder in section 6 as if there's the definition of the Treasury management activities of the council. Is there any possibility of that being amended so it has regard to the impact of activities on climate change? I just wondered if that's something which could be done or whether that's something which is restricted by kind of financial regulations.
Thank you, Councillor Vasma, for that question. Yeah, and it is a very good question. I haven't got that information in front of me. I will have to take advice and I will come back to you in due course.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. Do I have any other questions for Gwynne? Okay, Gwynne has proposed it, Rob has seconded it. All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed, everybody. Moving on to item number 8, Shrewsbury High Street. Councillor Steve Charnley, over to you.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, so Shrewsbury Town Centre travel restrictions. So this paper basically retrospectively ends the social distancing measures which currently exist within the high street in Shrewsbury. And obviously these restrictions were lifted on Monday, but this paper covers that retrospectively. It also sets out to approve an 8-week consultation on the experimental traffic regulation order, which has replaced those social distancing measures. So the consultation will be launched later in the autumn, seeking feedback for the new traffic measures for the town centre, which in a nutshell, Monday to Friday, 11 AM to 4 PM, restricts all vehicles except buses, taxis and cyclists from accessing the high street. And on Saturday and Sunday, 11 to 4 PM, restricts all vehicles from accessing the high street. And also seeks to reduce and restrict through traffic on the town walls by formalisation of existing temporary measures on the town walls, or the implementation rather of a low traffic zone. These schemes are supported by Shrewsbury Town Council and Shrewsbury BID in conjunction with the council. But the purpose of the consultation is to get feedback from residents, businesses and visitors to the town. The last thing we want to do is impinge on the thriving economic growth within the town centre. And for that reason, I would like to add a further recommendation under point 2 in the recommendations, and that is for Shropshire Council to run a separate consultation with the businesses within the loop of the river who will be directly affected by this. I do have some reservations that businesses may not all be in support of the new measures, but that is the point of the consultation, so that's the reason why I want to add a fifth bullet point into those recommendations. Consultation will come back before Christmas time, and we will be studying that in detail. And as you'll see from point 2.3 in the recommendations, it will come back to myself and the Executive Director of Place to formalise a way forward, which hopefully suits the majority of people who responded. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Charnley. I have questions so far from Councillor David Basmer and Councillor Julian Dean. So, David Basmer, yours first.
Thanks very much. I very much welcome this report, and I think most people would agree that the changes made during the pandemic have been very well received, and the majority of people, seem to have liked them. So I'm very pleased with this report. However, there's just a couple of comments really. One is that I would hope that the low traffic zone would be considered for town walls. I notice that's an and/or option in the recommendation, but I hope that the concerns of residents are very much taken into account, and obviously this will be, a point to be considered during the consultation. But the other factor I want to raise is the reduction in disabled parking bays as a result of these changes, and I would like some assurance that long term we can look at increasing the number of parking bays, because obviously they're in great demand at the moment, and to reduce the number I think will cause problems to people with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Basmer. Councillor Julian Dean.
Thank you very much. A couple of comments. Firstly, just in terms of the businesses, as I understood it, when the survey was done in the autumn about the current measures, there was a good majority of businesses in support of something like this, and in support of the GDC, and certainly it has shifted, I think, in favour. So I'm hopeful with regard to that. The second is a question just in terms of how the current scheme is going to be enforced. I saw a tweet recently from a business owner and former councillor about a private car making its way through during the hours when they're no longer supposed to be there. So I was wondering how we're able to enforce that. And the third is a question really about the consultation, because your bullet point 3 suggests formalisation of existing temporary measures on town walls, but also suggests a low traffic zone. Now, obviously, the option to consult upon existing measures is great, because people can see what they are and can respond positively to them. I'm just wondering how we can ensure that there's a useful consultation on something which is presumably a bit more substantial in terms of low traffic zone, which would prevent some through traffic. It would have been good to have had an opportunity for people to experience that, especially town walls, residents and others, in order to make the consultation meaningful. So I'm wondering if there's going to be an opportunity for that to be experienced as a trial run rather than just be thrown out there as an idea for people to consider in the abstract. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. Councillor Alan Mosley.
Well, they say great minds think alike, Chair, and I was going to ask exactly the same questions as Julian Dean regarding how is the whole process going to be enforced. Just to add, absolute support for the programme that's being followed. But just at the end of the day, there's going to be regulations introduced with some impact. Is that going to be subject to temporary experimental action, or is it going to be made permanent as a result of this consultation? Because I think things will be changing very rapidly, and what we might introduce post Christmas in the new year on this are likely to be changed again very, very rapidly, given what's happening with active travel and public transport and other initiatives.
Thank you, Councillor Mosley. Other questions? Councillor Steve Chalmers.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you for the various questions. Councillor Basma, yeah, we are working with Town Walls residents on an ongoing basis, so they've been part of the working up this plan, as you will know, in partnership with the BID and Town Council. More disabled bays, I think that's one which we can look at going forward. I think we need to find a balance here on what measures are going to be implemented long term before we start putting in parking bays, because obviously there was another process to go through to implement extra parking bays with traffic regulation orders, etc., etc. So we need to get the basics right first, and then we can build on that strong foundation. Councillor Julian Dean, yes, businesses were consulted originally, but obviously not all businesses within the loop are BID members, so we want to make sure that we capture all businesses within the town centre, just to cover all bases and make sure that we've asked the question of everybody and make sure whatever scheme we come up with eventually in perpetuity, that people are clear and happy with that. Enforcement is actually a police matter, so we're working with the police at the moment to enforce the current scheme which is in place. Obviously, we've all seen in the press yesterday that the scheme started on Monday, and we've got cars starting to go through because the barriers aren't there. But that's for the police to work through, and we are working closely with them to make sure that the scheme comes to fruition and is abided by. The consultation. Sorry, Councillor Dean, can you repeat that question at the end?
Certainly, yeah. So part of the consultation is about sort of continuing the scheme as it sits, and part of it seems to be about a proposed low traffic zone, which is more substantial and which would prevent through traffic over from the English Bridge to Welsh Bridge, as I understand it. I'm just wondering that the risk is that consultation is in the abstract, whereas the consultation on the current scheme is obviously on something that people are experiencing. I'm wondering if there's a way of trialling the low traffic zone.
Yeah, thank you for that. In a nutshell, yes, there is. What I would like to do is run this consultation as it is for now to establish that baseline, and then we can do a follow-up consultation regarding the issues on town walls to make sure that residents are happy with what's going on. I think if we broaden the consultation too far, we will get so much information back and it will dilute the essence of the original measures. Alan Mosley, yes, regarding the temporary or permanent measures long term, we'll do this consultation. That'll trigger a temporary measure going forward, and it is an iterative process. You will have to see what works. So we'll get through this consultation, put another experimental order in, trial that, and if everybody is happy with what's going on, that will become permanent. If the consultation comes back and says everybody is happy with the current one, well, that is likely to become a permanent measure. But we've got to see where the consultation leads us first.
Thank you, Steve. Cabinet are probably just going to face palm at the moment, because one of the items that I wanted to talk about, actually Alan Mosley has picked it up, but also just to go back to Julian's question about the low traffic neighbourhood in on the town walls. I do agree, actually, Julian, that it's going to be really difficult for people to understand what the low traffic neighbourhood is going to mean to them if we don't actually do an experiment with it. So I think that's possibly something, well, not possibly, it's probably something we are going to have to do if we want to include that. I do have some reservations about this report, actually, and the reservations to me are that we've got to trial this, we've got to see how it works. We've sort of seen how it worked over the last 12, 18 months or however long it's been, but I think this is a bit of a watered down version. And I'm not popular amongst my cabinet colleagues with this, but I think the problem that we've got at the moment, and having buses and taxis going through, well, and bikes actually going through the, because I don't think you'll stop motorbikes doing it either. It needs enforcement, and we need to look at this holistically in much greater depth. Cabinet are aware of this, the officers are aware of this, so we'll run this consultation as it is if everybody's in agreement in a moment. But I think we are going to have to put a temporary low traffic neighbourhood, if we can, onto town walls to see how that affects traffic. And we are almost certainly going to have some form of enforcing it ourselves, because I don't think we can rely on the police to do it. My son lives in Camden. He lives on a low traffic street, and they simply have cameras at the bottom of it. And if you go through there, you're given plenty of warning to turn around, and if you continue to go through. The difficulty we have in Shrewsbury, of course, is that if you're just about to go up the high street and you've missed the turn for town walls, or you can't go up town walls, it's very difficult to turn around. But I think in essence, I think we need to look at this over the next 3 months in much greater detail. I understand there's a desire to keep it as it is over the summer months, but I think we need to get around the table and look at this in much greater detail. Alan Mosley.
I was just going to say, delighted to hear what you say, that this needs to be revamped and continuous changes. And it's good to know that you're aware that the police won't enforce it, given the resources that they have. And we ought to put everything possible into making sure that it's enforced. But I just had a question. The CITIP, the Integrated Transport Plan for Shrewsbury, had a series of signage all around the town centre, which was designed to encourage traffic flows out of the town when people are looking for car parking spaces and things. Could we have a report on that and how that's coming along, particularly with respect to how it's likely to impact on through traffic and traffic moving around the town just looking for parking?
Councillor Mosley, I asked the very same question yesterday. The difficulty we've got at the moment is just they're all ready to go. We're just having difficulty finding the power for them, the actual power supply, because highways are being a bit, not our highways, I hasten to add. We've got an issue with one of the providers or something, but I can certainly get a statement back to you as to where we are with those. I was told yesterday that they're all made, they're ready to go. It's just literally putting them up and getting power to them. So it should be very quick. And I agree. I think we do need to make sure that we can signpost people away from the town centre. So I'll do that for you. Quite happy to do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so I've got Steve proposed it. Do I have a seconder for that? I'll second. Thank you, Councillor Cecilia Motley. All those in favour? Thank you, that's passed. Moving on, item number 9, proposed improvements to recycling containers. Councillor Ian Nellens.
Thank you. This is about the provision of wheeled bins for curbside collection of plastic, metal and glass for recycling. There's a full report that sets out the programme for the provision of a 240-litre wheeled bin for recycling across Shropshire households. This, in outline, first of all, was a manifesto commitment. That commitment came about by the requests from many residents across the county, and the plan is to introduce a 240-litre recycling bin to replace that for the mixed recycling of glass, tins and plastic. It will encourage recycling and reduce waste to landfill. The increased basic container capacity will go from 110 litres to 240 litres. It makes a separation and storage of the plastic, glass and metal more convenient, easier to segregate for the convenience of residents. It will reduce the amount of wind-blown litter from boxes and will improve the manual handling for residents and waste collecting crews. The cost of this project is around £2.93 million, and it's expected that up to 80% of the residents will apply to take up this offer. Communications will be sent out to all households to give them the chance. It will not be compulsory to have a bin. It will not be convenient for some residents, but it will be introduced over a 6-month period. The plan is to have it over a 6-month period starting in the autumn. So the recommendation to Cabinet is to request to approve the principle, the use of a 240 litre wheel bin for recycling and the intended rollout plan. Cabinet's also requested to approve the cost of this to come from council resources at a cost of £2.93 million.
Thank you, Councillor Nellens. I'm happy to second that report. I have questions from Councillor David Vasmer and Councillor David Minery. Councillor David Vasmer first.
Thank you. Yes, I just want to make a comment on the recommendations, and I noted that the member responsible said that you were basically going for 2.2A. 2.2B actually allows the authority to recover costs from residents, and I would like to say that having discussed this issue with residents in the past over green bin recycling, there is a lot of opposition to any charges being made for recycling. People see this as a benefit of the council tax, and I think there will be a lot of opposition if that was put forward. So I'm very pleased that the member actually recommended 2.2A, and I think this is will be an excellent scheme, because I think it shows that we're kind of serious about recycling, we're serious about climate change, and we're serious about keeping the streets reasonably tidy, because at the moment, as we all know, a lot of rubbish is blown around because it's blown out of the boxes. So I'm really pleased with this, and hope it will be implemented as soon as we possibly can.
Thank you, Councillor Vasmer. Councillor David Minery.
Thank you, Leader. The question relates really to the size of the bin relative to the volume of the boxes that we currently use. The 240 litre bin, of course, I'm not arguing against it, but the 240 litre bin is probably contain half a dozen or more of those black boxes that we currently use. So as a consequence of this move, are we looking at emptying that new bin perhaps just monthly rather than fortnightly? Has that been looked at all? And if so, would it be save enough money to cover the additional cost on the revenue under A? And as far as the options are concerned, I totally agree with what Councillor Vasmer has just said. It makes no sense at all to me to not do these free of charge if we are asking people to pay for it. I hear that, yes, 80% may say yes. I doubt it would be that to start off with, and we'd have an absurd situation really when on any street we'd have boxes remaining and stuff still being blown on the wind around, and then we'd have somebody else with their nice new bin. It's just ridiculous. So I'm glad you're going for A, but if you have got an answer to the question, then I'd be grateful. Otherwise, I'm quite happy to receive it in writing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mary. Councillor Julian Dean.
Thank you. First of all, just to acknowledge there's been a useful exchange following last week's full council between Councillors Kerr and Nellens regarding waste minimisation, which is reassuring that we are continuing to look to ways to do that. That's in the end, that's probably more important than recycling. But the other thing I just wanted to draw attention to is the climate change appraisal on this report. This is the second time I've made this point. These appraisals really are, I hate to use the term greenwash, but they're not really adding much to the discussion. it's a very one-sided appraisal. You know, there clearly are costs in terms of manufacturing these bins and distributing them and all sorts of things like that. It just would be good if these appraisals showed an attempt to do a little bit more thinking and to give a balanced climate change appraisal rather than what sometimes read as rather bland statements. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. Councillor Gwilym Butler.
Thank you, Leader. Just a few comments, if I can, please. I fully support taking option A, as this is a county-wide proposal that will help everybody throughout the whole of the county and is not for a specific area or town. However, I'm also pleased that we did put option B in there, because we do have to make our residents and our council taxpayers aware of the cost and what we are actually doing. And at the same time, we can only spend this money once, as I'm obviously overlooking the purse strings, and it may be the case, you know, other things may have to slip in the future due to the cost of delivering this, but that is what we're here for, and that is what we are elected for. Personally, I don't think we will get the 97% uptake, because there is an awful lot of terraced houses, flats, everything else, and it is that argument about having the rubbish coming outside of your existing box against where do you put your extra wheelie bin. So it'll be very interesting to see what the actual uptake is, and I will certainly be keeping an eye on that. So again, fully support option A, but people do need to be aware of the cost of this on the ongoing situation and issue with finance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Councillor Steve Chalmers.
Thank you, Leader. A little bit of repetition probably, but yeah, I too fully support option A. It was a manifesto commitment from our group to offer this service, and free. It was always intended to be a free of charge service, but I think as Gwilym has just highlighted, I think it's only right that people do understand that the costs that are involved, because I think there is a little bit of innocence with the public thinking that these things don't really cost anything sometimes, so a bit of realism is good. Just going back to Councillor Basma, you mentioned green waste there. Yeah, we took a conscious decision a number of years ago not to charge for green waste, and I still believe that is the right way to do it. You know, we pay for our waste to be collected through the council tax, and this is exactly the same. So why would we charge for either, in my view? Just an additional point, yeah, I'm really pleased it's an optional scheme. You know, it is up to the residents to choose if they want to take this up or not, and it gives that flexibility to the resident. As a matter of fact, I've been doing it for a number of years because I don't have green waste, so I've been shipping everything in the green bin, and it gets collected and it works really well. And I don't have that plastic blowing down the street. But perhaps I shouldn't have said that, seeing the leader shaking her head at me.
No, perhaps you shouldn't have done. However, I think we'd all agree that, you know, not having the plastics flowing everywhere it would be great, and I do see an awful lot of that. Last but certainly not least, Councillor Dean Carroll. Oh, he said never mind, his points have been covered, so that's okay then. I'm happy to second that. Councillor Nellis, do you want to come back on some of those points?
Yes, thank you. I think most of them have probably been answered. However, on Councillor Minory's point about monthly collections, that's not a plan at present. One of the reasons for that at the minute, it could be reviewed, but one of the reasons is we're trying to increase our rate of recycling. If we increase our recycling by 10%, for example, that will bring in an extra revenue of approximately £120,000 per annum. So that is some feedback from that. But again, that can be reviewed at a later stage. The size of the bins, 240 litres, is the generic size. However, it is appreciated that some households, etc., won't have that room. They have the option of retaining the bin. But we're also looking at the option of the slightly slimline bin, depending on cost, so the 120 litre, for example. And just to respond to Councillor Dean, noted what you said about the climate change appraisal, and I'll pass that on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nellis. Alan Mosley, I think you've indicated you wish to speak.
Yes, sorry, Chair, I was a bit late. I wasn't able to read what the Tory party manifesto was in the election because I didn't receive a leaflet, nor did many other people around the town, although there was a candidate. Are there any other manifesto commitments that you made that are going to be implemented in the near future?
It's a good point from my memory, Councillor Mosley. Highways was one of them. That's the first tranche of that was put into place last week, so that's a tick in the box. This is the second one, so that's another tick in the box. The third one was to ensure that Shropshire people have the first choice of Shropshire homes. That's happening already. Tick in the box. Councillor Charmy? It was the three. So there you go. Sorry you didn't get a leaflet, Councillor Mosley. I'll make sure you get one next time. That's okay. The only thing I'd just add to that actually is one of the problems that we've got, Councillor Minory, at the moment is we're waiting for the results from the government's environment bill. The environment bill, as you probably are aware, is looking at loads of different things regarding what waste is collected, what we can charge for, what not what we charge for, because we don't, but what councils can charge for. It's all about food waste. So until we know exactly what the government are going to say, we will relook at the waste system over that. The interesting thing is that normally what would happen if you were looking at a reduction of any sort is that you would actually increase the recycling, increase the food waste and reduce residual waste. But we've not looked at that so far. So thank you for that. So Ian Nellens has proposed it. I've seconded it. All those in favour? Thank you very much. I look forward to that bin. I'm fed up with the plastic going around the bottom of my road. Item number 10, back to Councillor Steve Charmley for the Highways Asset Advertising Policy.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, this paper seeks approval to move forward with an advertising policy on our fixed assets on the highways, such as roundabouts, lampposts, etc., etc. The recommendations are set out in point 2, 2.1 to 2.4. I have picked up in the press that a lot of negativity about this, about being distracting to drivers and making people avoid potholes and that sort of thing. I should point out that this isn't advertising Las Vegas casinos or get married in St Martin's via Elvis on 50-foot boardings. These we already have around the county. I think some of the roundabouts in Shrewsbury themselves, run by the town council, are small signage advertising that this roundabout is sponsored by whoever it may be, and that is the scale of the advertising which we are talking about. As an example, some of the lamppost advertising was recently in Llangollen, and there are kind of feather flags advertising some of the cultural things which are ongoing there, and they're very effective and very pleasing on the eye, I've got to say. I didn't find them distracting at all, but obviously there is a scale. If we end up looking like Las Vegas, well, I won't be happy either. But I think something which is in keeping with the Shropshire brand and green and pleasant land which we live in, is acceptable in my eyes, and hence this paper is coming forward. It will give us an income stream to help with the maintenance programme, and with that I move.
Thank you, Councillor Charmley. I've got a seconder for that.
Happy to a second.
Councillor Gittins. I've got questions from Councillor Vasma and Councillor Carroll. David Vasma.
Sorry, I've got a phone going at the moment. Can I just ask a series of questions really about firstly on what plans are there to assess the increase in clutter across the county? Councillor Charmley made reference to that during his opening remarks, and I'd be interested to see whether there are any plans to assess that long term. Secondly,
sorry, can I just stop you? Could you repeat that, because you cut out and I think we missed the vital word.
Oh, sorry. It says, what plans are there to assess the increase in clutter across the county? I think Councillor Chalmsley made reference to not being like Las Vegas, and presumably there will be some process whereby this will be kept under review to make sure that the cluster, advertising cluster doesn't get too much. Secondly, many lampposts in town centres and approach roads already sport banners, which and I wondered what will these be displaced by commercial signs? How will that be? The town council obviously has advertising on roundabouts. How will that be managed? What consultations will they go on? What sort of consultations will be done on these and other matters? Has Highways England been consulted about this? And planning permission, will we, is there a planning permission we need to consider on this? And also, you know, we're committing ourselves to not cut the grass verges as much as we have been in the past in order to encourage biodiversity and reduce costs. So, you know, how will that be impacted if we have lots of signs which perhaps need to have the grass around cut back? Anyway, there's a series of questions which I would be interested in response.
Thank you, Councillor Vasmer. Councillor Dean Carroll.
Thank you, Leader. I think it's important to remember on this that we're not first adopters, we're not second adopters, we're not even third, fourth or fifth adopters. This is something that dozens of councils across the UK already do very successfully, including neighbouring Telford and Wrekin. And as Councillor Vasmer pointed out, Shrewsbury Town Council in fact does on roundabouts which it maintains. So I think that anything which is unobtrusive, which I trust from the safeguards in this policy it will be, which brings in additional revenue to support the services that Shropshire Council delivers to its residents, will be absolutely welcome. And in terms of Councillor Vasmer's question on, or point on planning permission, well, different advertising mediums do require different kinds of planning permission, and that's something that we are very well aware of. And so it would have to be judged on a case-by-case basis. You can't make a judgment on an entire policy based on that. But I believe that the safeguards to prevent over use of advertising adjacent to highways are sufficient in the policy, and that the additional income to support services is absolutely welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. And I've got a question from Councillor David Murray.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Sorry, I'm just struggling to unmute myself. My question's on actually the appendix, the first of the appendices, which contains a table showing income or potential income and costs, etc. And there's a couple of questions there, really. First, about the contractors. We see the contractors' costs are being deducted, but then I see the contractors are also going to get a 40% share. And I'm just wondering what the justification is for that. And the other thing that's not mentioned there, and I apologise in advance if it's somewhere in the text and I've missed it, but what about the effects on the business rates? Because we all know from painful experience in the past of people refusing to pay for the business rates on their signs on the roundabout. So has that been costed in as well? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. I don't think I have any other questions. So, Councillor Steve Charnley, would you like to come back on that?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Councillor Vasmer, yes, clutter, not just on roundabouts and lampposts, etc., will be kept under constant review, as you would expect. It is an ongoing process, and as I set out in the opening remarks, it is important to me and my Cabinet colleagues that Shropshire continues to be a green and pleasant land and a welcoming landscape to everybody, and doesn't become Las Vegas. That is very, very important to myself. Regarding planning permissions and Highways England, etc., that process is already well in train. You do it with Shrewsbury Town Council already, so the process is well established, and that will be ticked off. Biodiversity, yes, that's very important to us. We are working with schemes across the county to encourage wildlife zones along the hedgerows, etc. That definitely isn't going to change. It's not part of the plan at all. I would sort of would be encouraging those schemes to continue going forward and won't be impinged by these advertising options. Dean, I think the remarks you make are spot on there. This we're not a vanguard scheme here. It happens all across the country already, but it's got to be bespoke to Shropshire, and as I say, sympathetic to the countryside which we have surrounding us. David, yeah, I think I welcome your support on this generally. and the income from it will support maintenance of the traffic islands. Certainly a lot of discussion at the moment about, you know, why is this traffic island been cut and that one hasn't. So this will certainly support that. And yes, we've reviewed the business rate implications already. So that will be, yeah, that's already taken into account. I think that covers everything. So thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor David Vasman, you wanted to come back on one point?
Yes, thanks very much. I don't think you mentioned about consultation with town and parish councils, Councillor Cholmondeley. Just wondered whether what proposals you have for, you know, generating that sort of response from them over this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Vasman. Yes, it won't be a formal consultation, but discussions will be had with, you know, with the local councils where such advertising or lampposts or roundabouts are situated. You know, obviously, we don't want to start a war with Shrewsbury Town Council by bridging you all off the roundabouts within the county town, and you know, it's got to be done sympathetically. You know, this isn't a sledgehammer to crack a nut. It's going to be done sympathetically on all fronts.
Thank you, Steve. So, Councillor Chalmers proposed it, Councillor Rob Gittins has seconded it. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That's passed. Item number 11, variation to determined admission arrangements. Councillor Kirsty Hurst-Knight.
Thank you, Leader. As you can see from the report, previously looked after children had priority, and with this moving forward, we will ensure that looked after children and adopted children within our county are seen and treated equally on first priority for school admissions. This is through the revised draft school admissions code passed recently through the parliamentary process. And when I say recently, I mean July. This is really recent. So we need to adjust Shropshire's council admissions. We need to adjust the arrangements so that we're in line with this and we're compliant with the new schools admissions code, which is what we need to be. So I'd like to put forward the recommendations to Cabinet to approve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hurst-Knight. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Ed Potter. Do I have any questions on that one? It's a technical report, something we need to do. No? Okay, thank you very much indeed. All those in favour? Thank you, that item is passed. Item number 12, exclusion of press and public. I'll have to propose that we exclude the press and public. Do I have a seconder for that?
Yeah, I can second it.
Thank you, Councillor Cholmondeley. So we will now take a pause whilst I get the signal to say that we're no longer live streaming.